Hello, everyone, and welcome to PublishDrive Author Hour. I am back from vacation, and so I'm really looking forward to talking to you today and talking about mid-year review. So I hope you had the chance to watch our other videos and let me know. What did you think? Anything that you've learned or would like to still learn? Today, we're going to talk about our mid-year review because here we are, the middle of the year, and one of the biggest things that authors struggle with is understanding where to go with their business, what's been working, what hasn't been working, what they still need to do, and what the data is telling them. This isn't a guilt session of, oh my gosh, I didn't do all these things that I planned. But it really is looking at the data of, okay, here are all the things I planned. Where did I succeed? Where did I fail? Where do I need to adjust how I work? Because that's really what failure is. It's just data. It's just telling you where something didn't work and where you need to adjust your plans. So for those of you who are new to PublishDrive Author Hour, we go live every Tuesday morning at noon Eastern, which I guess is after, I don't know, do you call noon morning or afternoon? Either way, we're live every Tuesday at noon Eastern, and we talk about different ways to help authors succeed. Sometimes it's just me, sometimes it's a guest, and always we hope to give you valuable information. So please share any feedback or questions or comments. And we want to make this as beneficial for you to be as successful as possible. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about with this mid-year reset is I think we go into the new year with all these ambitious goals. This is what I want to do for the year. And all of the different things that we have planned. And I don't know about you, but when I thought about what I was going to do this year, I had really ambitious plans that, guess what? I did not do them. So some of you have seen my live demo where I took you right into my PublishDrive dashboard and I showed you I've got one book in PublishDrive right now. I've got other books elsewhere and that are trad and also part of group author projects that I couldn't put into my PublishDrive dashboard. But, as someone who's got all of these books, what I planned was that one book, I put it out in December. I actually had planned on 2 books in December. And so I wrote the second book and I realized it needed heavier lifting on the editing and I just didn't get to it. And so now that book I'm going to wait and put out as a Christmas book next year because then I'll have time. I mean, not next year, this year. Sorry, 2026. I'll probably do it like November-ish of 2026 is when that book will come out. But I had this whole series planned and I didn't write it. Okay, I did write part of it. And again, I got caught up in a lot of other details. I started a training program for a therapeutic process called RIM, which I am loving, but it's way more intense than I planned. And so what happened was I didn't have enough bandwidth to write more books, do more editing until I learned what the schedule was going to look like and learned where my bandwidth was going to be. And I'm sharing this because I want you to understand that this is typically where a lot of people get discouraged is they're like, okay, well, I failed at this, so I'm done. But now I have data. I know that this training that I thought was just going to a couple classes here and there is now something really intensive that I need to spend about 6 to 10 hours a week on. And so I now understand that I have my full-time job. I have 10 hours a week on this training. I have other daily life things. And so that's narrowing my window in which I have to write. So that's actually really great data, because what I was trying to do is do too many things in a smaller window than what I had. And that's what I want you to look at. I want you to look at, okay, great. This is what my goal was. This is why I didn't reach it. And be honest. Like some of that, okay, raise your hands if you do spend a little too much time in front of the television. For whatever reason, I'm usually not much of a TV person, but the past 6 months, I've watched way more TV than I normally do. And so, again, data. And so really take a look at what you've done and why you've done it. And here's the other thing in thinking about that is as I mentioned, I started this new training that ended up being way more intense than I thought. What other things happened in your life? Did you have a family member become ill? Did you have a new family member? Maybe you got a puppy, and that puppy was way more work. That's I am not getting a puppy, by the way. But as you take stock of what happened, take a look at your books. What does your catalog look like? What have you promoted? I mentioned this again when we were looking at my dashboard. I've done 0 promotion on that book. And I'm again, I've said I'm okay with that. But now is the time that I can say, okay, I have a little more bandwidth. I understand what my schedule is like. I have this book. I have this whole catalog of backlist. How do I start promoting it? And what does that promotion schedule look like? Because again, it is really about looking at you and your process and where you see those gaps. I know where my gaps are. And so being able to say, okay, what can I realistically do? What is reasonable for my schedule, my bandwidth? And that's one of the things that I discovered as well. So part of my process is I use ChatGPT as kind of I don't even know how to explain it, but I have like a analysis piece within ChatGPT where I really do talk to it about what I did, what went well, what went poorly, etc. And I encourage you, if you are struggling with really being able to see what your patterns are, that's a great way to do it. And you could do it with any of the LLMs, really. I just use ChatGPT because that is the one that knows me the best. And so I was able to put in all of the things about what I did and how I did it and how I'm working and where I feel like I was failing and how to bridge that gap between failure and success. And ChatGPT really gave me an answer that I wasn't expecting, because Chat was like, I know you're frustrated that your writing didn't go the way you wanted it this past 6 months. However, here's what you did learn. And so it broke down all the different things that I learned. And one of which is that I have a very nonlinear process. So even though I didn't finish a book, I have like 5 other books that I've started and played with and done things. And so now for this next 6 months, it's like, okay, which one makes the most sense for me to finish? And let's focus on finishing that and giving myself time to work on that book, but also know that I have time to play with these other ideas. And that's where I was getting frustrated with the pushing. And I was watching TV out of a sense of rebellion that I don't want to have to push myself. Well, now I don't have to, because now I know I have some structured time to work on this thing. And then I have other time that is free that I can play on those fun projects. Again, that's something I learned about myself, and I wouldn't have known about myself had I not talked to ChatGPT about it. And so here are some things that you can reflect upon. First of all, start and make a list. And like I said, I use ChatGPT to analyze this for me, but maybe you can just analyze it for yourself as well. But get out a notebook, get out a pen and piece of paper, or if you want to just type it in a Word document, you can do that too. But ask yourself, what did you do for drafting? I actually drafted way more words than I thought I had. What did you do editing? What did you publish? What did you outline? What did you research? What kind of cover work did you do? Did you do anything with your metadata, your pricing, your newsletter? How did you communicate with your readers? What kinds of ads or promotions did you do? Did you start distributing to other stores? What did you do on your website or your platform? And here are some that we don't usually talk about, and I think we need to. Number one is learning. What classes did you take? What did you learn? Maybe you didn't take a class, but you learned something really important about yourself and your writing process. Like I said, when I realized what my writing process actually is versus what I thought it was, because remember, chat had all of this data on me about my process that it could say, I know you think your process is this. It's not, it's this. And I'm like, oh, wow. And now that I know that, I can lean into my process. So some of that is just, what have you learned about yourself? Maybe you have learned that you're most productive at a certain time of day. Maybe you've learned that you need a day off. And that's the second thing to put on your analysis. What did you do to rest? We talk so much about work, and we make work really important, but rest is just as important, because you have to refill that creative well. You have to recover. Even top athletes who are successful always have rest days. If you're working with a personal trainer, they're not asking you to do a heavy workout every single day. They plan rest days. How are you at planning rest days? And that's something that we don't think about, but it can help you be more successful in a business. One of the business coaches I work with, she always says, rest magnifies my success. And all that's doing is giving your body that chance to recharge and have that ability to really get out there and have the energy to do things rather than being exhausted while you're trying to accomplish things. Which leads me to the next thing that you need to take a look at, and that is your creative refilling. How did you refill your creative well? I think sometimes we forget that piece as well, refilling the creative well. For those of you who have read The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, completely recommend that book. It's a great book. There are pieces of it I like, pieces I don't like, but one of the things she really points out is that you have to refill the well. At some point, as an artist, as a creative, that well goes dry. How are you filling your creative well? What are you doing to give yourself that inspiration and that creativity? One of the things she suggests is artist dates. And I have been doing a lot of those. And it's been really wonderful because I've done all kinds of great creative things. I have a craft day with one of my friends. I've gone to different museums. I've gone on walks and spent time in nature. And I know it feels like sometimes you're wasting time or you're not being productive, but that time is actually super productive because what it's doing is it's giving yourself that space to rest, your mind that space to rest, and room for all those creative juices to start flowing. And finally, personal growth. I know we're talking about our business, but we also need to think about how are we growing as people? That's going to help you. That's going to help your writing. That's going to help your business. And for me, the first 6 months of this year were huge in personal growth. As I mentioned, I'm doing some training called RIM, and it's really intense. And it has provided me with really deep, meaningful personal growth. And so while I'm like, yeah, but you don't see like books published and things out there, what I can tell you is that the books that I will be publishing, the books that are coming out, are going to have so much more depth that have come from my personal growth. And it's something we often discount and we don't always see because you don't have the numbers and the data to back it up. And that's why it's really important to document all of this and to say, okay, I didn't do this, but here is what I did. And so you can really start to measure that, hey, I did do a lot. Maybe I didn't do enough marketing, which is my case. Okay, great. Now that I know that I lacked in the marketing, where can I add that in? How can I be more effective at my marketing? And that's why I say, like, really count what you have done and consider that a success. And maybe as you're planning the next 6 months, and like me, you're like, oh, I didn't do enough marketing. Maybe you're like, I still don't have time for marketing. That's valid. Now, knowing that you make that choice to not have time for marketing, remember that when you say don't have sales, well, also consider I didn't do any marketing. So that is the basic reflection to do. But then next, celebrate what went well. Like, find that evidence of progress. What worked better than expected? What went really well for you? What brought in revenue? What connected with readers? Where did you get really good reviews? What gave you energy? What did you finish? What did you learn? What would you repeat? Wins are also data, and you shouldn't be rushing past them or discounting them. Really celebrate them. I have a poster on my wall, which you can't see, but I did it at the end of 2025. And it was all of the things that were my successes for 2025. I really encourage you to make something like that for yourself for 2026. What did you do in 2026 that you want to celebrate? Because there's always something to celebrate. And that's the fuel that you're going to use, those celebrations, the things that you're proud of. We spend so much time focusing on where we went wrong that we don't sit and celebrate the things that went right. And I want you to fuel your growth for the next 6 months from a place of celebrating what you did right, what you did well. And then this is where we go into what didn't work. And this is where you have to be honest with yourself. What mattered to me that I did not prioritize? What project kept getting pushed back? What business task did I avoid? Where did my actions not match my stated goals? What am I calling a strategy that might actually be avoidance? This is not about blaming yourself or getting down on yourself or being angry with yourself. This is about telling the truth clearly so that you can do something useful with it, so that you can take that data and say, these are my spots. This is where I know to avoid the traps and where I can be honest with myself. And maybe it is that you've taken on too much. And some examples of this, wanting more sales but not promoting, which is something I've talked about. You want more readers, but have you sent out a newsletter? You want to finish a book, but you're consistently switching projects. Woohoo, me. You want to go wide. You want to succeed as a wide author, but you're not focusing on how to create a good wide strategy. You want income, but you're not making offers, updating books, or running campaigns. And yeah, I'm guilty of a lot of those. So when you look at that, don't feel bad. Just use it as data to say, where can I improve? And here's the thing, this might be a really big list for you. I know it is for me, but think about one thing that you can do to improve. Don't try to tackle the whole list. Tackle one thing at a time. One thing different that you want to do to move forward for the rest of the year. And so as I have been doing all of this, like I said, I went into this to say, wow, I just feel like I haven't done anything the first 6 months. But when I wrote out that evaluation and I looked at everything I did, I realized I had done so much more than I thought. And that's why you need to do this exercise, is that it isn't about the numbers we think it is. It's about all the numbers and the big things. And to really take a look at the fact that perhaps the initial expectation you had of yourself or the initial goals you had for yourself, maybe they weren't fully aligned. And that's why it's really important to understand your actual creative process. For me, as I mentioned, sharing all of this with Chat and getting a pretty detailed analysis of it. And I did ask Chat to be pretty critical. I said, don't hold back, don't sugarcoat it. I want to hear the truth. And the truth for me is I'm always too hard on myself and I expect too much of myself. And I also expect my process to be like other authors. Some authors are linear, some outline, draft, revise, publish, repeat. And that's great. That's what I tried to be. And the truth is I'm not that way. Some authors are linear, some are cyclical, seasonal, burst-based, research-driven, intuitive, discovery-based, deadline-driven, conversation-based, understanding, energy, all of that. For me, I need a lot of processing time, and I am not linear. I have all of these seemingly random things that I put out there, and then eventually the connection between them is made, and boom, I suddenly have this output. But I have to have that time and that permission to do all those weird nonlinear things that don't seem to make sense. And when I finally figured that out about myself, I have been so much more productive and got so much more done, because now I'm like, oh, my productivity isn't necessarily my daily word count. It's all the other things that I'm doing to feed that daily word count, that until I learned to track those and learned to count those as progress, I thought my lack of daily word count meant failure. And I'm here to tell you that is not true. And the reason I'm stressing this is I know a lot of people who are trying to force themselves into a process that isn't theirs because that's what they're told real authors do. And it's not always true. It's true for some authors, but it may not be true for you. Have you heard a real author writes every day? That's not true. Not everyone writes every day. And you don't have to. I know that my process, for example, if I have to just set aside 15 minutes a day to write, I won't write because I need time to get engrossed in the story. And I need time as I'm engrossed in the story to really work with it and write it and be with it. And sometimes that is a several hour process. And so now I know, okay, if I only have 15 minutes, writing is not going to be the best use of my time. What can I do in 15 minutes? Maybe I can send a newsletter. Maybe I can write a quick blog post. Maybe I can put a post on social media. All these little things that you can do that are 15-minute tasks. And so that's where you can build from what you already have. Is as you're analyzing your process and figuring out your process, think about how to use the time that you have. My friend Allie Pleiter has a book, and I think she teaches a class on the chunky method. And part of that figuring out your process is what time chunks do you have and how do you use them? And so since I know I can only write if I have a big chunk of time, other tasks that I need, I can find those small chunks of time. And I can use those small chunks of time to do the other tasks. And figuring out how much time does each task take. If you don't know, start keeping track as you're doing different tasks. Figure out what that optimal amount of time for you is and how your brain works and how your own personal process works. This is just so important because so many times we hear from time experts and people who tell you how to work more efficiently. That might work for them. And it might work for some of their clients, but you might be trying to stuff yourself into a box that you don't fit in. So figure out what your box looks like. And so take a look at all this analysis you've done, and now think about what can you build from what already exists. You've created some kind of foundation in the first 6 months of 2026. So that foundation and those things that you created, what can you build from? Sometimes the problem, as I have realized, is that you have not done, it isn't that you haven't done enough. Sometimes the problem is that you're not harvesting what you've already created. So, for example, I have all these different drafts and all of these different books and pieces that I've written and this and that. And what I haven't done is I haven't taken a look at what can I reasonably work with? What makes the most sense for me to do? Where's my passion? And so I just went through and I cataloged and categorized all the stuff. And I took an honest look at it and said, okay, what makes the most sense for me to do? And so I'm focusing on one project. Again, the project that makes the most sense. I have the second book in the series. It is like this close to being done. I'm working on edits. And so that is what I'm working on now. And that's my main focus. However, since I know I need to have all my squirrel projects, I still have them. But I know my primary target is to finish and publish this book. And as my friend Jill Cooper, who was on a previous episode, was just telling me today, if you need to break it down into smaller steps, publish the book is super big right now. And that's an overwhelming thought. Finish the edits on the next chapter is super easy. And I will probably do that this evening. So take a look at those things for yourself. You've got these giant projects. You're like, okay, I'm going to finish this and then break it down into smaller steps. You don't have to do it all in one day because that's where you get overwhelmed. So some other things you can do: turn an outline into a writing plan, turn research into bonus content, turn old blog posts into newsletters, write more blog posts, turn a series into a box set, turn reader questions into content, turn a talk into a lead magnet, take some blog content, turn that into a lead magnet. Take a look at your metadata in your existing books and see if you can improve them. Take your scattered content into a reader journey, which is one of the things I will be focusing on later this year. And see what other stores you might be able to distribute your books to. Or maybe it is finding a new format. So my ebook that we've talked about, what I did, and you guys saw the video of me doing it, is I turned it into print. And so now I've got an ebook and a print because that was an easy win for me. One more format. Is that something that you can do with your book and your work? One of the most powerful things authors can do is look at the assets they already have and take those things and use them to your advantage. Are your books easy to discover? Are they available where readers are looking? Is your metadata clear? Are you using the distribution and promotional tools available to you? And so then after you've looked at all of this, this is where you can refocus. Choose the 3 priorities for the next 6 months. This isn't meant to create the giant guild list. This is to look at the list and say, realistically, what can I do in the next 6 months? So when I was doing that analysis of the books, I embarrassingly or not embarrassingly, I don't know, I have about 10 books that are finished. They need editing, they need covers, and they need to be put out. Yeah, maybe that is embarrassing. I don't know. And I sat down and I said, which one makes the most sense to put out next? I didn't say, oh my gosh, these 10 books, what am I going to do? Which is what I have been doing, to be perfectly honest, is and using that to feel guilty that, gosh, I have these books done and I haven't done anything with them. Well, okay, pick one and do that one first. And really look at that and see the 10 books or the one book that makes the most sense. Maybe you have 3 or 4 unfinished books and you don't know which one to finish. Look at what your strategy is for your publishing and how you work and figure out which one makes the most sense. And take a look at all the different priorities you have. And again, rather than making this a big thing where you've got this whole list that's overwhelming, make your list, but then prioritize and put the rest into a parking lot that you are committed to working with at a later date, but it's not a priority right now. And so here are a few priorities to look at. Your creative priority, whether that's finishing a draft, revising the book, choosing the next project, coming up with a series plan, or just even coming up with a realistic writing rhythm. And that's actually my second priority, which is kind of tied to my first, is figuring out what a writing rhythm is. Now that I'm understanding more and more about how I work, I am really looking at how do I create a sustainable writing rhythm. And then your business catalog priority. Are you updating your do you need to update metadata, refresh book descriptions, review pricing, improve your covers, organize your backlist? Do you need to create a reader magnet? Do you have to expand reader distribution? Maybe you need to review your store availability and see where else you can put your books at. Another priority might be visibility and sales. Are you emailing your readers consistently? Do you have a promo calendar? Have you been applying for promotions? Have you tested ads? Are you running ads? Are you building partnerships or creating other content and reconnecting with existing readers? I know I've just given you this huge list. Don't do it all. Pick the ones that most resonate with you, that you most need to do. If everything is a priority, then nothing becomes a priority. Pick the few that are going to make the biggest difference in your career by the end of the year. What are the top 3 that are going to move the needle most? And then methodically go through and do those top 3 things. If you have time after that, if you accomplish them much faster than you thought you would, then great. Pick another priority from that list, but don't try to do it all at once. Focus on getting done one at a time what needs to do. So I mentioned how I've been using AI as my reflection partner. And I want to be clear because I know that not everyone wants to use AI. And so you don't have to do it. But this is how I do it. And I want to give some of the prompts and information that I personally use in case you need some ideas as a jumping off point. The reason I like using AI for this is I do write out all of this. I do analyze all of it on my own. But what I have noticed is the AI sees patterns that I don't see, because that's what AI is really good at. They're really good at pattern recognition. And so make sure that you are looking at your patterns and what do you see that consistently comes up. I think we're often blind to our own patterns. And so if you don't want to use AI, that's fine. But maybe sit down with a friend, someone who knows you really well, and say, hey, are you willing to sit down with me and see where my blind spots are? Help me to really figure out what I can do to move my needle forward this year. And so what I suggest pasting in, you've got your January goals, what you actually accomplished, what you published, what you earned if you want to include numbers, what changed in your life, what you avoided, what you want by December. Have those January goals changed? What is your available capacity? And how does that capacity work? It's so important because so many times we overplan these goals thinking we have all this capacity when we don't. On the flip side, there are people who shoot too low and actually have capacity to achieve more. So be really honest about that. Look at those questions that I just gave you, and then all of the ones that we've been asking throughout this episode. Put all that information in, as much as you're willing to do, and as much as you feel comfortable with. And then here is the prompt. Act as a strategic publishing coach. Help me evaluate the first 6 months of 2026 as an author. I will give you what I worked on, what I published, what I earned, what I avoided, what changed in my life, and what I want for the rest of the year. Help me identify what went well, what needs improvement, what patterns you see in my process, and the 3 to 5 best priorities for the next 6 months. Now, these last 2 points are super, super important. Do not give me generic hustle advice. Help me build a realistic plan based on how I actually work. And that's so important, because really keep asking it about you and how you work. Because here's the thing, all of these hustle culture people, I mean, some of the books, they're right back behind me on my bookcase. I read them. I try to do that. I can't, because that's not my process. So talk to it about what your process is. Let it know what your process is, and it will come up with some really insightful things about what you can do, which things are your priorities. And of that 3 to 5 list, you don't have to do it, but it gives you an idea of what's going to help you best move the needle forward. And that's what we're looking for, right? We all are here to be more successful as authors and publishers. And one of the things that I think is important in doing this, and why I want to do this, and why I'm encouraging all of you to do this, is trying to figure out how to make this career sustainable, how to make your publishing sustainable. I've been in this business for a long time. I just did the math in my head and I got scared. But one of the things that I recognize is that so many of the authors that I loved and respected, who were my friends starting out on this journey, have burned out and aren't writing anymore. I don't want that to happen to you, unless you feel the need to just not write anymore. But I don't want it to be because you've burned out. I don't want it to be because you've hustled so hard that you can't live up to your commitments. I don't want you to create this ambitious plan to write this whole book series and then not have the bandwidth to finish it. I've done that. I actually have a whole book series planned. I put out the first book, promised the rest of the books to the readers, and I never finished it. And now it actually doesn't even make sense for me to continue with that series. So there it is. We all have these things that we've done that we're like, I wish I had finished that series. I wish I had done that. Don't live there. Use that as power and data to move forward. Why didn't you finish that series? Why didn't you get those books out? How can you avoid that in the future? What can you do to set yourself up for success? And so before you stop watching the video, I do have a little bit more, so stay tuned. But by the end of today, I want you to sit down and I want you to put one action that you're going to do in the next 7 days. Not a giant goal, not write the whole book, one action. Update your book description, email your list, outline one chapter, schedule one promo, review your metadata, choose one project. Something concrete enough that in the future you will know that you succeeded, that you can write that down as a win. So for me, it's not going to be finish the book. My 1 week action, I am going to edit one chapter. Anything else after that is gravy, but one chapter. And I feel really confident saying that it's going to be a good goal because it's not too easy and it's not too hard, and it will move me forward. And the reason is I know that this next chapter that I have to edit is going to be a lot of heavy lifting, and I've been avoiding it. But if I know all I have to do is that one chapter, that's the only thing, I can do that. I can get that done in a week. So what can you get done in a week? I would love for you to leave in the comments your commitment to something that you can get done in the week. And we can talk about that. Our next episode, we are going to be having some special guests talking about foreign rights and selling your foreign rights and how you go about doing that. So next week, we're going to talk about that. But if you have any questions or any comments, or you want to share your win, please make sure that you do that. And we will save some time to talk about our wins and answer any questions. Because I think it's really important for you to realize that you are being supported in your publishing journey. One of the things that PublishDrive is committed to is we don't want just a list of authors. We want authors to be successful. And one of the things that I did on my vacation, as some of you may have seen from my video with Kinga, is I was in Budapest with the team planning out PublishDrive strategy moving forward. And we reiterated our commitment as a team to helping authors succeed. In fact, just before I came on live, a little bit before that, we had our big town hall for all the company employees where we were talking about that commitment to helping authors succeed and how we can better do that. And so, number one, if you have thoughts or suggestions or things you'd like to see, always feel free to reach out with your comments. Secondly, one of the things that I am going to be doing, and really excited to be announcing, that PublishDrive is holding a free online author conference for authors and publishers on becoming more successful. And so one of the things that we're going to do is within the next couple of weeks, I will have a landing page with all the details and information about it. But save the date, September 8th and 9th. It will be a free live online conference on YouTube that anyone can attend. I'm going to start sending out speaker invitations this week. And so if there's something, a topic you'd like covered, a speaker you'd like to see, please let me know. I really want to help authors find a way to succeed, because that is something that is our goal as a company. That's our passion. That's our mission. That's what we're driven to do. Because the more people who succeed, the more all of these wonderful stories and great ideas are going to get out into the world. And that's how I personally believe we can make the world a better place. So stay tuned. We will see you again next week. As I mentioned, we have some special guests next week, so don't miss that. And as always, feel free to reach out with any comments, and we will talk to you again really soon.